Time out, time out, time out. You guys, it was just announced that Kamala's the VP. It was just announced that Kamala's the VP pick.
I'm like even more energized now. Okay, so let's dive in. Hi, everyone. I am Elaine Welteroth, and I am so excited to have the honor of interviewing someone today who is very special. And among many things, she is the Emmy-nominated star and executive producer of Little Fires Everywhere, the Kerry Washington.
Hi, Elaine. I'm so happy you're doing this. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
We are about to run a clip that Kerry selected, and warning, there's a spoiler alert here. So, and for those of you who have seen it, you remember this will bring you back into the drama of the show. So let's roll the clip. If you haven't seen it, step aside now.
Wright is your real last name. Warren was my brother's name. I had a fantastic brother, but he died. And then my parents disowned me, and you were my everything. And then we came here, and it feels like all of that changed. So, sweetheart, I think that I gave BB our money because I needed to prove that keeping you with me was the right thing to do. Because sometimes I don't know. I don't know if it was right. I don't know that if I had given you the choice that you would have chosen me. Come here.
That scene makes me emotional all over again. Why'd you have to do that to us, Kerry?
I didn't totally choose it. I let like people on my team help me choose these things because I have a hard time watching myself often. I mean, I have to as a producer. I watch the edit, I watch the cuts, but it's hard to go back and revisit the work, especially when the work is so personal, like this show.
I can only imagine. I mean, I have no problem watching you on screen. I have to say that I thought that you were phenomenal in this. Congratulations is in order. 4 Emmy nominations. That is incredible. What a feat. What a well-deserved feat. I'm just so incredibly happy for you. I'm a huge fan of yours always, but this show in particular just took you to a place I've never seen you go. So we have so much to talk about as it relates to Little Fires Everywhere. But I think we have to acknowledge the moment that we're living in. We're obviously here for an extremely celebratory reason, which is you. It's celebrating your big nominations. But we just got some big news, and I'm so excited to be able to share with this moment with you. But maybe you can tell the people what we just heard, the breaking news that just came through.
We just heard, I just got a text about Kamala Harris being the VP pick. So I was so happy to be able to share that with you and the amazing crew that's filming this, the behind the scenes folks. It's just such incredible historic news to have a woman VP running mate, to have a Black woman VP running mate. She's somebody that I have known for a long time, and she's a very dear person, and I'm happy for her, but I'm really excited for the vision of what this country can be with the right kinds of leadership.
And obviously, this is a turbulent season for all of us for so many different reasons. For me, this is good news. But we're living in the midst of a double, maybe even triple pandemic, depending how you look at it. And I know, you're home on top of the triple pandemic. I mean, with the racial unrest, with the actual coronavirus pandemic, and then we're in this swirl of a historic election year. Which is taking us on an emotional roller coaster ride every single day in the news cycle. And then on top of all of that, you're homeschooling 3 children um, while working full time and somehow finding time to like meditate with all of us on Instagram. So just thank you. And but really, how are you doing? How are you coping? How are you grounding yourself through this time?
Oh, it's so, I mean, just I love being able to talk to you, Elaine. It's like I miss being able to share physical space with people, but when we can at least like share digital space with people that make us feel safe and like it's safe to open our hearts and share of ourselves. It's such a treat. So I love you. I love seeing you. You know, I'm doing like everybody. I'm like just it is one moment at a time. You know, not even one day at a time.
Yes.
It's like 1 minute at a time. And I think I'm you know, trying to navigate all the new normals and trying to pace myself because you know, I don't think this is gonna change overnight. And there's a lot. There's just a lot to be navigating right now. So I really feel like I'm trying to just like be present and of service in the places that I can, in the ways that I can, and so I really appreciate you taking the space and time to have this conversation because I know we all have a lot on our plates right now. But I also really appreciate how much I appreciate how much you saw in Little Fires Everywhere. You know, because we were telling so much story, we were covering so much ground, and I think the show resonates with a lot of people in a lot of different ways. But I feel like you met the show in many of its story points. Like you were able to really like see us and hear us in a lot of what we were saying. So I'm really grateful for that perspective and for audiences that really like met us where we were and were willing to wrap your very generous arms around all of the different stories about motherhood, all the different kinds of mothers, all the different kinds of daughters, all the different navigations of identity and race and class and there, you know, there's a lot going on in our show, and I'm really proud of it, and I'm really grateful that you got it.
It was hard not to get. I think that it is really a testament to you and Reese and the whole writing team and the directors. I mean, the casting was exquisite. I mean, it was it, I mean, I have chills just talking about it. And for those who aren't totally familiar, I'll give a quick, you know, backdrop. The show Little Fires Everywhere is essentially a study of two women, Elena Richardson, who is a wealthy mother of four, played by Reese Witherspoon, who we both love so much.
And she's magnificent in the show. She's magnificent. It's to me the performance of her career, and I'm a huge Reese Witherspoon fan, but it's like she blows it out of the water.
She takes us to a place, honey. I have
Yes,
never
yes.
seen Reese Witherspoon go. Both of you did. So, and then your character, Mia Warren, is sort of this nomadic single mom who sort of becomes inextricably linked to Elena and her family. And there are so many unanswered questions and secrets and mysteries that sort of unravel as the series unfolds. And you know, you see ultimately these four women who find themselves in a web with each other, and they're all sort of in these different states of desperation, and they need each other, and they're also at odds with each other, and they're also sort of grappling with this idea of relative suffering. You know, this idea that you know there's always suffering that's worse than the suffering your experiences, but than what you're experiencing, and so it's so layered, it's so complex, and like life, it requires you to see the good and the bad, the light and the dark, in all of these characters and in all of these complicated relationships. I mean, I think what I loved the most about the show is that it isn't simply for mothers or women or young people. While there's a lot of young people in the series, but it's really for the entire family, and it's really for anyone, and it lends itself to like multi-generational viewing, interracial viewing, and sparks conversations between kids and parents, friends, and spouses. And I know it because I was out here sparking them after I watched the show. But I'm curious from your perspective, as a producer and as one of the stars of the show, and as someone who had the luxury now in this generation of being able to watch some of those electrifying conversations play out in real time on social media. What were some of the conversations that you found the most moving, or maybe that you were surprised by?
There were two conversations that I thought were most exciting for me. One was I really loved a lot of the responses from Black women who were like, I see myself, right? Like who recognize the microaggressions coming from Elena and the need to like continue to move forward in a space that does not feel like it welcomes or understands you. That idea, and it wasn't just from Black women, it was from like all kinds of marginalized people who were like, oh, I have been in that space with that person who is putting their foot in their mouth and they don't even know it. And I have to smile and like tuck it away and trek on. And that was really exciting because that was something that we worked really hard on in the development of the show of like, what is going on for Mia internally in these moments, and how do we capture that on screen, but not in such an obvious way that Elena would feel disoriented or, like we wanted it to be Mia's experience and not necessarily be telegraphed to Elena, but still be witnessed by the audience. So that was really exciting. And then a lot of folks who I think were, entering into this debate about what it means to be a mom and what it means to be a good mom. Because I think the show really kind of explodes the idea of that assumption of what makes a good mom. And we're really forced to be more nuanced and sort of accept a different kind of complexity around like, however you mom, if you're doing the best you can, that's good mothering. Like, it doesn't have to meet a standard. It doesn't have to meet a label. It's like everybody's doing the best they can with the tools they have. And yeah, so that was another conversation that was really fun to witness.
So you play Mia Warren, and she is this deeply complex, some might even say unlikable, in parts of the series, which is actually refreshing to see, I think. And I think we are starting to see more and more female characters who are being given the permission or giving themselves the permission. In your case, you were one of the producers on this project, to just be unapologetically flawed and beautiful and fragile and strong. And your character was all of that and so much more. I'm curious what your relationship became with your character and how you were able to get into that headspace of playing a role that is just so layered, so raw. And also, if you could speak to sort of the importance of why you think, Hollywood, it's time that Hollywood embraces stories with unlikable, in air quote, unlikable women at the center of these stories on screen.
Well, one thing I want to say is I just want to point out Reese's performance because I really do, like, I thought it took such enormous courage for her to take on the kind of the embodiment of privilege that she does. Yes. I just thought to reveal and to contextualize who that woman is, how she becomes that way, how it's expressed, the inner life, the inner workings. Like, so I was doing an interview where somebody was like, she's like the prototypical Karen.
Karen, I was going to say that.
But what she does actually is she humanizes the Karen, right? Like, she makes you not traffic in the stereotype of white women tears and white women privilege, but really understand where and why and how. And I think it's such a beautifully courageous performance and so just like ninja acting to watch. And I was there, you know, watching it in person. And I think for both of us, you know, we don't think about playing unlikable women. I of course know what you mean because that's what how a lot of people describe it. But we're just playing real people. Like, and I think when we allow ourselves to tell narrative about women who are three-dimensional and complex and who have good days and bad days and who have flaws and assets, that what we're doing is actually giving permission to all of us real women to be all of those things, right? Like if we traffic in perfect ideas of female identity, then we're perpetuating the disease of perfectionism. Being a woman is not
Yes.
about trying to be perfect, it's about being human. And even when we have things we want to fix and grow about ourselves, until we face them, we can't grow. And so I think when we face them in characters, it allows us to witness ourselves, to witness who we want to be or who we don't want to be, and we get to like deal with our own humanity and the humanity of our sisters when we tell narrative about complex women.
Oh, so well said. So well said. To your point about Reese's portrayal of Elena, it it absolutely was like watching the archetype of Karen just walk through the world like a bull in a china shop. And Reese's performance of this archetypal character of Karen, I think, was even harder to watch in the context of what's happening in the world in this moment. You know,
Mm,
seeing Amy Cooper, uh, you know, embody privilege in such a dangerous, violent way in on the news, right, and on our phones, and then to watch this character, as you say, become the embodiment of privilege and do it. And Reese played that character so well. And you're right, it did absolutely humanize that character to an extent. But I don't want to take the focus off of what you were able to do as well with your character, because we have seen so many tropes about Black women, and being
mm,
strong and mean, and the struggle kind of defining them. And in some ways, when we meet
mm,
your character, we see some of that. And then as we get to know her more and more, we see those layers kind of, we see beneath those layers. And so what was it like for you to be able to speak truth and portray a more truthful image?
yeah, it's interesting. I feel like there's a lot of information into, you know, the layers on the show, because even in that first episode when you meet Mia, I could see on social media how people were like, she's so mean, she's so angry, you know, like this angry Black woman. And yet within the same episode you see this delicate love for her daughter, this like
Yes.
vulnerable, innocent, precious love. And even that dynamic of saying like, this woman who may look to this woman who out in the world may appear to be angry, you have no idea what's going on in her home. You have no idea who she is off the clock. She's dealing with defenses out in the world, but there are vulnerabilities in places that you haven't earned, that you don't get to witness. We're going to let you witness that in this moment. So that also was so much fun to like remind people that we cannot judge a book by its cover, and who we are out in public with each other, navigating each other, may not always be the core of who we truly are if we're in a safe space.
Mm. Again, so well said. I want to talk about the process of adapting this book. You know, as a
Mm,
producer, you were a part of making the decision to change Mia and Pearl's race. In doing so, the show's writers needed to ensure that those characters' stories were told authentically. Um, and so I'm curious what that process was really like for you. You know, can you talk about some of the decisions and the choices that were made, and what your role was in some of that as a producer?
yeah, you know, it wasn't my idea actually, because I got the call from Reese Witherspoon and her producing partner Lauren Neustadter. They thought of me for the role. So it was really their idea to make Mia Black and therefore Pearl Black. But I have to say, there's been a point in my career. I remember, years ago, like for example, I was in the first Fantastic Four, and my character Alicia Masters had traditionally been this sort of blonde-haired character in the comic books in mid-century, and they were like taking this amazing historical choice. The film was directed by a Black director, and he was like, I want to make Alicia Masters Black. Amazing. But it was a big superhero movie. It didn't impact the narrative of the film. We just made Alicia Masters Black. And so it was like this period of color blindness where like, let's do open casting. Other characters can be other colors and it doesn't have to impact anything. That was what progress looked like at one point. This process was entirely different, as you mentioned, because by making Mia and Pearl Black, in a piece that is all about exploring identity and difference and community and trust and prejudice, and by layering in a difference in race between Mia and Elena, it added entirely new levels of responsibility in the story that we were telling and how we were telling it. And that I'm really grateful that everybody on the team, our writers, our directors, our editors, that everybody got on board with really wrestling with what it means to add race to the mix for this character. And it really did. It impacted every step of how we told this story. I'm so deeply grateful to Liz Tigelaar, our showrunner, because she was so committed to always diving into the complexity with us, whether it was about sexuality, whether it was about race, whether it was about class, whatever it was. But it required a lot of massaging and sort of almost like excavating. Like we were like archaeologists excavating, like what if race is in the story, what does the story become, right? And really being open to that and holding space for it and allowing for it.
Absolutely. There was a lot that I think the show was able to accomplish and a lot of ground that it was able to successfully cover because of not just that decision that was made to change their race, but the thoughtfulness with which that decision was executed. And so again, that is a testament to you, my friend, as a producer.
But you look at a moment, right? You look at a moment, for example, like in the book, Elena asks Mia to be her housekeeper. And now, Celeste Ng, the brilliant novelist who wrote Little Fires Everywhere, she always says that Mia was sort of racially ambiguous to her. In her mind, she was already dealing with being other because of class, but she hadn't specified that she was a Black woman. When you ask a Black woman to be your maid, it's an entirely different conversation. And I remember sitting with the writers and saying, like, we have to figure this out because Mia is also an incredibly prideful woman. So if Elena just asks her to be a maid, like that's a moment. We have to grapple with the complexity, the discomfort. Maybe Elena has to find other words besides housekeeper. That's how the whole like house manager, house helper conversation got started because we had, we talked about it in the writer's room. Like, guys, we can't just say housekeeper and Mia say yes and not talk about how fraught that is for a Black woman in the 90s to just dip in and be somebody's housekeeper as if it's 1790, not 1990.
Right. Right. So I would love to hear, Kerry, you talk a little bit about your journey from playing Olivia Pope for 7 years, who we loved watching so much week after week, to shifting your focus professionally to becoming a producer. And I'm curious to hear what that journey has been like for you, and what were the kinds of stories that you were eager to tell and why?
Producing really started for me halfway through Scandal. I made a film called Confirmation for HBO, where I played Anita Hill. That was the beginning of my producing career, and I kind of fell into it. I just wanted to tell that story But I wanted to make sure that I had some authorship in how the story was told and could be, really have a seat at the proverbial table in terms of making decisions on that project. And so I became a producer. And then I later became a producer toward the end of Scandal. And really, I got bit by the bug. It's really about providing an opportunity for other people to do what they do, right? Like you get to create the container where all these artists and artisans come in and they get to pursue excellence because you've given them the playground to do it. And so I really love that. I love being like a team captain, cheerleader, coach type of person on set and sort of helping all of us move toward a shared vision. And it's important to me to not just tell stories that I love, but also to not just to make great work, but to also feel good making it, like to help create environments that feel safe and safe for people to be creative and to do great work.
What an experience it must be to have Kerry Washington be your on-set cheerleader and champion. I mean, clearly you're having a ton of success as a producer. So again, congratulations. You've had such a prolific year. I mean, okay, so let's talk about these. There's 3 of your projects this year really center on issues of race, between Little Fires Everywhere, American Son, The Fight. And I'd love to hear from you why it was so important to you to tell these stories in this moment, both as an executive producer and as an actress.
To me, what these projects all center on is family and community and belonging. And I think that like those are themes that I return to again and again. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, Scandal was also about family and community, like finding your family where you can, grappling with your family of origin. Because I think that, our ability as human beings to value each other as family is going to be necessary for our survival as a race, like as a human race. To me, American Son, even the title, is really about the fact that the child in that play, Jamal, he is the child of this Black mother and a white father. But by the end of the play, most people who witness the play feel like Jamal belongs to them, regardless of what race they are. He becomes all of our son. And we realize that we must all take responsibility for the children of this country, of this world. I mean, when in The Fight, when that family gets reunited and that mom is hugging her daughter that after they've been separated at the border, like you just realize like we have to protect each other's children, each other's families. It's that Fannie Lou Hamer quote, and unless we are all free, none of us are free. So I think that's the theme that I keep returning to in my work is sort of like the love of family and the need for liberation.
Really well said. I have to tell you, I saw American Son on Broadway, and I was so moved by it. And, as someone who grew up in a household with a Black mother and a white father and a mixed race Black brother, I really identified with the ways in which the project created an entry point for a nuanced conversation about police brutality and how it specifically affects the Black community. But this conversation was an interracial conversation, and it required folks on different sides of racial divides to wrestle with and grapple with this very, unfortunately, timely issue. I found a quote from you that that just really resonated with me. You said, "For my whole life, art and social change have been impossible to separate." And you talked about being 12 and 13 years old, doing HIV/AIDS education and advocacy work through an arts and education theater company, here in New York. And I read somewhere that your mother even begged you to be a lawyer because she wanted you to pursue, this work through that conventional path. But so much of the work that you're putting into the world does have this social justice bent, and it's significant in terms of starting conversations. And we know of the importance of work that has the power to change hearts and minds and to start conversations that can change our culture, which eventually will change policies. So as we wrap up, I just would love to hear kind of, as we approach Emmy season, you have, again, 4 Emmy nominations, which I'm just going to keep on saying that because I'm so proud, but it's, it's a celebratory thing in a really grim moment in our history. And so would just love to hear sort of some final thoughts from you on what it means to be, Kerry Washington, this Black woman that is revered by so many with this huge platform that you have. What is your message to your fans, your community that supports you as we head into not just Emmy season, but also a historic election season?
I really try not to get pulled into a lot of the drama or the indications of awards as worth, right? Like, I think there's a danger in putting too much value in a nomination, that the nomination means that you matter, right? Like, we matter inherently as human beings. We matter inherently as artists. There is so much work that deserves to be acknowledged. So I'm deeply, deeply grateful, but I also try to not get too caught up in it. Because the reason why it's hard for me to untangle activism and art at times is because I'm a woman and I'm a Black person. So when I center myself in the work, that's activism, because I'm inviting you to see me as a woman. I'm inviting you to see me as a Black person, and to not allow me to be marginalized, but to allow me, whether it's 1 hour a week on Scandal or an hour and a half in American Sun, I'm asking you to let me, or the character that I'm playing, a Black woman, matter in your world, in your heart, in your mind. And that's important. That invitation to receive my humanity, my full complex humanity as a Black woman, I know that that is radical for some people, that some people don't have the opportunity to see us or receive us or step into our shoes and into our lives. And I know we also don't get enough opportunity to see ourselves and to witness our own stories as mattering enough to be worthy of a narrative on stage, on screen, on your tablet, wherever. So I take what I do seriously as an artist, because I'm centering not just myself, but I'm centering Black womanhood in the stories that I'm telling, where I am at the center. It's not about me. It's not about my ego. To me, I don't see those nominations actually as saying like, wow, Kerry Washington matters. Really, how I receive that is like, these Black women, Mia, Kendra, they have mattered this year. And that is very meaningful to me. It's very emotional for me, because, the whole say her name hashtag was invented because we don't see the Black women who lose their lives to police violence. We don't say those names. And so we need to say her name. And by saying Mia and Kendra and living with Mia and Kendra and Olivia, we wrap our heads around how much Black women matter. And to me, I think it means that Sandra Bland matters. It means that Corinne Gaines matters. It means that Breonna Taylor matters. I don't want to make it seem like it's not marching. I'm not Kamala Harris. I'm not doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but I think our narratives are important when we claim space for the lives of Black women. And so I'm grateful that there are so many nominations for narratives around Black women this year, whether it's Tracee Ellis Ross, Octavia Butler, Regina King. Like, we are mattering, and we're not going away. And we're going to continue to fight for our stories to matter, so that you continue to fight for Breonna Taylor to matter.
Can I just give you a round of that was the most grounding way to wrap this conversation up and to contextualize what this moment means, what your work in this moment means, and what your Emmy nominations mean. And as a fellow Black woman, as a fan of yours, as a friend, I am proud of you, and I want you to know that these Emmy nominations, no matter how they pan out, your work matters so much to us, and we see you, and you represent us so beautifully. And I'm really getting emotional just because of the way that you contextualize what this moment, what it means to be us in this moment. And we have so much more work to do, but I just want you to know your work matters. And to everyone watching, thank you for taking the time to participate in this conversation. And I just know that all of you watching feel as proud of Kerry as I do. So Kerry, I hope you feel that love from your community of fans and your friends in the industry. And we're just so proud to watch you shine. And we know you are going to shine on Emmys Day, even if you're at home on your couch. We'll be tuning in and we'll be rooting for you. So much love to you.
Mwah. Bye.